Colleagues, it's time for us to start our meeting, and we've also formed a quorum. However, a soft reminder for you. I hope that you can stay till the end. The first thing we have to do is to elect an acting chairman, because Mr. Ip Kin Yuen notified the Secretariat very early this morning that he would not be able to attend this meeting. So, election of acting chairman. Nomination. I nominate Ms. Sito. Any seconder? All right. I accept the nomination. Any other nominations? All right. So, I'll chair today's meeting. Let me say right from the start that I understand that you may have to go from one meeting to another. But usually, if only the chairman remains, I'll adjourn the meeting. So please watch out for this. For a period of time, I have to leave and then come back. Sorry for that. So let us have collective will. Don't let the chairman remain alone here. All right, please stay till the end. All right, please invite the deputations to come in. Originally, 16 have signed up, but now one will not attend. Although we have quite a relaxed timetable today, I'll still give 4 minutes to each deputation only. Today, I'll only invite the deputations to speak. If the administration has anything to tell us, I'd like to wait till Mr. Ip Kin Yuen comes back. So for this meeting, we'll only listen to the deputations. And if necessary, members can seek clarifications from the deputations or ask them questions. In attendance today, we have the Deputy Director of Environmental Protection, Mr. Andrew Lai, the Assistant Director of Environmental Protection, Mr. Mok Wai Chun, the Senior Environmental Protection Officer for Air Policy, Mr. Yong Mo Man, and then from the Labour Department, we have the Occupational Health Consultant, Dr. Raymond Leung. From the Labour Department, the Senior Occupational Hygienist, Mr. Chung Hon Chung, and from the Department of Justice, the Senior Government Counsel, Mr. Alan Lai. Thank you for attending. We have 15 deputations today. Please find your seats and be seated.
有冇英文人啊？冇嗬。咁就歡迎各位團體嘅代。
Welcome representatives from organizations and individual attendants. Welcome for the additional information and remarks from you. Let me introduce the equipment to you. At your seat, you have an earpiece. You can listen to the floor or simultaneous interpretation. Channel 0, floor, Channel 1, Cantonese, Channel 2, English. So you can choose the channel that suits you. I'll give 4 minutes to each deputation to speak. Let me remind members of the public, organizations, and individuals that when you speak, you'll not be protected by CAP 382, Electoral Powers and Privileges Ordinance. Similarly, your written submissions will not enjoy protection and immunity either under the ordinance. So first deputation, Mr. Terrace Long, Program Manager from Hong Kong Construction Industry Employees General Union. 4 minutes each. Just look at the timer and you'll see how much time you still have. And an alarm bell will be rung to remind you when you're almost time's up. Mr. Terence Long. Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm from the Construction Industry Employees General Union. Very often, employees consulted us on suspected asbestos or materials to be demolished. From 2010, we've already received subvention from an organization for a promotion program. We visited homes, set up street seminars, street display boards, etc., to disseminate to workers, tenants of old buildings, village houses of new territories, the pneumoconiosis compensation fund and the diseases. And just last month we signed a charter with them. We fully support the prohibition of use of asbestos to protect the health of our workers and the general public. In Hong Kong, in redevelopment projects and in renewal of old districts, this program is fully launched. For building maintenance and repair programs and mandatory building and window inspection schemes, many workers and members of the general public have not been handling asbestos in the appropriate way. That's very common. And in rural areas, the dumping of asbestos materials is very common. Let me give you some information. On Hong Kong Island, for example, in Pak Fu Lam village, some residents dumped asbestos and tiles everywhere. And under wear and tear, the asbestos components will actually float in the air, thus causing health hazards. Now, this is in Samon Chai Tai Po near the waterfront. These asbestos tiles are actually floating on the sea and surrounding fishermen and people relying on the waters for a livelihood, so they'll be affected. And in many villages in the new territories, many farmers like to use asbestos tiles to partition their homes and fields. However, these are very harmful. Pneumoconiosis can have a very long incubation period, thus affecting life and limb. Now, this is very common. This is Ma Si Po and Fan Ling. So I'll not repeat too much what's in these photos. The dumping of asbestos is very unsatisfactory at the moment. Many old buildings and old tenement buildings have small landlords who cannot afford professional contractors to dismantle those portions of the buildings that carry asbestos. According to statistics, discounting scaffolding for the employment of asbestos professionals to dismantle a structure less than 5 meters, the cost is $10,000. For a 2-room unit, living room, 2 rooms, kitchen, bathroom, the demolition cost will be at least $50,000. And asbestos consultants as well as laboratory tests may also cost $100,000. So these are common worries of our Kaifongs. As for the administration, there's no dedicated fund to support these small landlords to demolish parts containing asbestos. As I showed you in the photos, it's very common for asbestos to be handled illegally. Well, Mr. Long, we know you want to set up a fund. Time's up for you. Please stop. Thank you. And please submit to us further information on where asbestos had been dumped so that we can follow up with the administration. Next, from Fugro Technical Services Limited, the engineer, Mr. Leong Man Wai. Madam Chairman, consider the law. I'd like to mention 3 points. Number 1, the exact definition for asbestos. What's it? Previously, the threshold was 1%. We heard that that's to be dropped. So we would like to know what's genuine asbestos. Usually is in fibrous form, but internationally, what's fibrous form is also controversial. So please pay attention to the definition. Please clarify the definition. Number 2, if the threshold of 1% is abolished, many materials, daily products and the like may contain asbestos. For example, the body powder for babies, cosmetics for adults and so forth may also contain asbestos. If that is the case, in terms of testing, how can we support the administration and the law? And if a product is from overseas, what should we do? Is it that if a sample contains asbestos, it should be banned as well from being imported? And what about the import and export ordinance? How is it going to regulate this? So number 1, definition. Number 2, many products may be covered by the laws on asbestos. Number 3, testing of imported samples. How can we exempt them? How will they be regulated? Thank you, Mr. Leung. Next, Mr. Tam Kok Leung, President of Hong Kong Chinese Prepared Medicine Traders Association. Thank you, Madam Chairman. I represent the Hong Kong Chinese Prepared Medicine Traders Association. Our association has a few comments to make. First of all, concerning the impact of asbestos and related materials on public health, long-term breathing in and contact with asbestos may lead to lung cancer and related diseases. There are certain Chinese medicine that may contain asbestos. However, these Chinese patent medicine is oral medicine to be taken orally. This is different from contact with skin as well as breathing in of asbestos. Therefore, these medicines should be differentiated from ordinary asbestos. And according to the WHO and the International Research Institute, there's no sufficient evidence to prove that oral asbestos will lead to cancer. And given the present information, potable water exposed to asbestos may not lead to cancer risks. Therefore, our association is of the view that without scientific evidence and specific clinical cases, we should not hastily and casually conclude that asbestos taken orally in the form of Chinese medicine will affect public health.
Secondly, we feel that materials such as actinolitum and tremolitum use, even though containing asbestos, have been in use for more than 1,000 years. And there were no cases reported that ingestion of these Chinese medicine will lead to pneumoconiosis or lung cancer or mesothelioma. And both these medicine, actinolitum and tremolitum, are used in conjunction with other medicine. And according to these formula, the combination of different Chinese medicine can lead to a negation or diminishing of the harmful effect of the elements. So you have to resort to clinical experience rather than negating the use of these Chinese medicine outright. Now, these are our submissions, and because of these reasons, we are of the view that members should support exemption clauses, and that certain proprietary medicine containing asbestos may be allowed to be used and to be sold. Thank you, Mr. Tam. Now we invite Mr. Chan from the Chamber of Hong Kong Logistics Industry. Now, I'm not in the construction industry. I don't know too much about asbestos, but I think we are looking at a historical issue here because asbestos has not really been used for the last few decades. They were only found in older buildings, and these were found usually in the very old tenement buildings. And so this is a historical issue, and obviously if people had known that the material was hazardous, they would not have moved into the building, and they would not have been used in the first place, and the government would not have allowed its use. So I think in a way the government should be held responsible, and the government should help the public, especially the poorer people of society. And the government should make arrangement to help them. Now, I would like to ask Mr. Mok, is it the case that the public has the freedom to just demolish those buildings, or have them demolished? And is there a committee formed to handle this particular issue, to find out the origin and then to monitor the situation? That's all from me. Thank you, Mr. Chan. Next, we have Mr. Clarence Wong from the Hong Kong Container Drayer Services Association. And then Mr. Cam, I beg your pardon, from Gammon Construction Limited. Now, we are in favor of the amendment this time, and I would like to know a bit more about two issues. First of all, asbestos-containing materials. It was said that if it exceeds 1% of the overall material, it will be considered as material containing asbestos. So the 1% is to differentiate between naturally occurring asbestos and asbestos put in artificially. Now, is it the case that naturally occurring asbestos will also be brought under the law? Secondly, the purpose of the amendment is to prohibit the import, sale, and transportation of asbestos materials. But what if materials were imported in the past and they use asbestos and they have to have asbestos replaced on a regular basis and there are no substitutes? Now, if you amend the law here, do you have exemption clauses to allow such machineries to continue, or would they not be allowed to continue? Thank you, Mr. Kemp. Next, we have Madam Bell Ho from the Construction Industry Council. Now, our council has discussed on previous occasions the use of asbestos, and we did not raise any objections, but we feel that there must be asbestos substitutes. And because the demolition of asbestos is very expensive, and we need to do something to reduce such costs. We now have Dr. Yu from the Hong Kong Workers' Health Center. Now, I will focus on the two exemptions. First of all, on proprietary medicine, the exemption for the two types, actinolitum and tremolitum. Now, we know that the WHO, they have an IRC, and they have certain things that are pretty misleading. Now, they did not rule out oral ingestion of asbestos leading to cancer, and they referred to stomach cancer and colon cancer in particular. And they were saying there is only limited evidence. And in the classification of carcinogens, they are referring to category 2A. Now, I'll give you an example. Now, we have Sudan red and malachite green, and they are one category below, but then they are banned already by law. So how come we can allow known carcinogens to be allowed to be imported into Hong Kong? Now, also in the Proprietary Medicine Committee, now these actinolitum and tremolitum can actually be replaced. They are not compulsory or essential. If you put in a carcinogen into medicine, but then they are not irreplaceable, I don't see why they should be allowed. Now, some would quote the 2011 potable water from the WHO. Now, they are saying, the study was conducted in 1993. The report came out in 2011, but it was done way back in 1993. So the IRC's report, as I was quoting, the study was done in 2009. So there is a discrepancy between the two. Now, if unfortunately the TCM or proprietary medicine gets the exemption, then the label must be such as to be a warning and that it contains carcinogens. Because itself it's a carcinogen, and there is no need to distinguish between oral ingestion or other forms of ingestion. Now, I have in my hand proprietary medicine, something you can buy over the counter, registered in Hong Kong, and it has 5% of tremolitum, but in English it says 8%. Chinese 5%, English 8%. So it's a lot more than the 1% figure mentioned earlier. Now, if in the transportation or in the actual use, the material is expired, or if there is to be destroyed and handled, so these are materials containing asbestos. So how do you handle the disposal of these items? You have to follow the rules. And does the trade really know that this contains carcinogens? So these are things we need to pay attention to. And I hope the Labor Department will make sure that its laborers are protected when handling these materials. Thank you. We now have Mr. Ho.
I'm Ho Tak Singh Peter, the Treasurer of Building Services Operation and Maintenance Executive Society. Today, I'm representing our society to deliver our views on the Air Pollution Control Amendment Number 2, Bill 2013. First of all, we would like to state our stance. Building Service Operation and Maintenance Executive Society supports the bill. Our members are operation and maintenance practitioners who always conduct additional and alternative work in varying buildings in Hong Kong. Dismantling and removing aging building materials with asbestos are common issue. To protect the health of the public and relevant workers, and to enable relevant trade practitioners fully comply with the updated legal requirements, such as mandatory building inspection scheme in our daily work, we would like to submit the 3 suggestions below for the committee member considerations. First, clause number 5, section 78, defenses. A detailed explanation and definition with practical examples are required for the person who carried out relevant work as stipulated in Clause 1 A and B. Also, in the Clause 2 A and B, the definition of sufficient evidence and beyond reasonable doubt must be clarified with practical examples, which are common in the relevant industry. Next suggestion, Clause 8, Section 83, exemption from Section 80. In the clause, the authority may impose any condition to the exemption and may withdraw the exemption at any time. To govern the authority, we suggest that guidelines must be added for the authority to follow during the execution of the above right. Last suggestion, Section 19 of Legislative Council, brief for the Cabinet Amendment, public consultation. In the above brief, several respondents consider that relocation of existing equipment, such as power transformers with parts containing hospital embedded inside, should not be counted as a new use. It is a good suggestion to match with the practical list of related industry. Hence, a comprehensive exception checklist of equipment is necessary for petitioners' information. We hope that the Legislative Council could take our suggestion into account when finalizing the bill. Thank you for your kind attention.
好，唔該。跟住喺香港南。
Now we have a representative from the Yi Tong, Mr. Ting Wing Fai. Now, we are of the view that without scientific evidence fully established showing that the actinolitum and the tremolitum are harmful to health when they are ingested orally, we are of the view that these should be allowed to be imported and sold in Hong Kong. Now, for the proprietary medicine manufacturers, and because of existing legislation already in place regulating materials containing asbestos, the production of actinolitum and tremolitum should follow such rules and practices. And for example, following Cap 59 of the Factories and Industrial Undertakings Regulation regarding the safety of the handling of asbestos.
As in under the Factories and Industrial Undertakings Ordinance 1997, number 74, and related regulations, we should protect the health of related persons. Besides, the experts are of the view that if asbestos is breathed into the lungs when compared with orally taken asbestos, the consequence will differ. Besides, in Chinese medicine, the use of asbestos has had a history of 1,000 years, and there's no clinical evidence to prove otherwise. As for the accumulation of asbestos in the human body, thus leading to cancer, I had taken reference from international authorities. According to studies conducted by the WHO, although some people remarked that the study was conducted in the 1990s, there's no scientific evidence to prove that orally taken Chinese medicine containing tremolitum and actinolitum will cause cancer. Without sufficient clinical evidence that the use of proprietary Chinese medicine that contain tremolitum and antinolitum will cause cancer, I suggest that capsules and tablets as such should allow PCM containing tremolitum and actinolitum to be sold in Hong Kong. Thank you. Now we have Mr. Kenley Wong, Chairman of the Hong Kong Chinese Medicine Industry Association. Thank you, Madam Chairman. I speak on behalf of the Hong Kong Chinese Medicine Industry Association. Concerning PCM containing tremolitum and actinolitum, we do not support statutory regulation. Why? Because there's no clinical evidence to prove that PCM containing tremolitum and actinolitum will cause cancer in the human body. Cancer is only caused by asbestos breathed in or in contact with the skin. According to the ICL Monogram 100C, in relation to potable water exposed to asbestos being related to colon cancer and rectum cancer, as well as the WHO standard in relation to potable water, there's no sufficient evidence to prove that oral medicine containing asbestos will lead to cancer. There's no international literature to prove that orally taken asbestos will affect human health, so we should not ban relevant Chinese medicine. Secondly, the use of asbestos in Chinese medicine has had a history of 1,000 history. Basically, asbestos has to be processed and mixed with other Chinese medicine to form PCM or TCM. So by appropriate processing, the toxicity of asbestos can be eliminated. So before further ecological studies and clinical studies on asbestos in Chinese medicine, we should not prohibit asbestos in Chinese medicine. Otherwise, it is not conducive to the development of Chinese medicine. Thank you. Next, Mr. Lo Chan Wai, Manager of Asbestos Removal Contractors Hong Kong Company Limited. Sorry, Madam Chairman, for the time being, I have nothing to say. Next, Mr. Ringo Yu, Environmental Committee Chairman of the Hong Kong Construction Association. Previously, asbestos is used as insulation, fire prevention in the construction industry. In a building, if the asbestos is intact, it will not harm physical health. But if demolition as asbestos is not appropriate, the asbestos dust will be flying in the air without being detected by the naked eye. If they're breathed in by human beings, a number of diseases like mesothelioma may result. Therefore, asbestos has been listed as carcinogenic. But internationally, including Hong Kong, we've detected the hazards of asbestos much earlier. So we have laid down rules and regulations in the use of it. Of course, the global major trend is to fully ban the use of asbestos. We're heading towards that goal. The Hong Kong Construction Association support statutory requirements to ban asbestos. But of course, the first step is to curb importation and use. The next step is to appropriately handle buildings containing asbestos. And then in repair, maintenance, and demolition, how should components containing asbestos be processed? Therefore, we believe that landlords should understand in advance the conditions of their buildings, such that workers will not work in an asbestos environment without previous knowledge. That is to protect workers' health. The use of asbestos has been in control for many years However, some building equipment and products still contain asbestos, like generators. The lifespan is very long. They have potentials of being repeatedly used. So our association proposes that in the repeated use of these equipment and appliances, exemption should be granted. When we consider granting such exemption, there should be clear guidelines from the administration. Thank you. Next, from the Hong Kong Institute of Marine Technology, Engineer Chan Moon Chong. Good afternoon, Madam Chairman and members. I speak on behalf of the Hong Kong Institute of Marine Technology. In the past 30-odd years, substitutes for asbestos had been developed very maturely in the industry. In marine technology, a lot of substitutes for asbestos had been used. Therefore, our institute has no objection to the proposed amendment to the law. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chan. Now I'll hand over the floor to our members. We have a relaxed timetable, so 8 minutes each. Lo Wai Kwok, Poon Siu Ping, and Dr. Leung Ka Lau, Mr. Tan Ka Pew as well. Dr. Lo Wai Kwok. Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd like to understand this. That is, the use of trimelitum and actinolitum in Chinese medicine. They're said to contain asbestos, but in what form? In the production of the relevant Chinese medicine, is there any opportunity in the production process that asbestos particulates would be released into the air such that human beings may breathe in these particulates? And just now, a number of friends from the Chinese medicine sector pointed out that up to this moment, there's no scientific or medical studies to prove that orally taken asbestos is harmful to human health. May I have some elaboration from the friends here? And there is this saying that asbestos is a traditional component of Chinese medicine. Now, when these Chinese medicine enters Hong Kong, in what form are they? Can we have some responses from the friends here so as to allay public worries? Because we would like to know whether there are opportunities for us to breathe in asbestos particulates from the air, like asbestos particulates. Here we have 3 members from the Chinese medicine sector, as well as a medical consultant from their sector. I'll give 1 minute each to them. Now, the 3 friends from the proprietary Chinese medicine sector. Who will speak first? Mr. Tan, maybe. Yes, maybe I'll follow your seating. Mr. Tan first. Thank you, Madam Chairman. Let me first explain that for actinolitum, it is very rare that it's contained in PCM. Some products do contain trimelitum, but for proprietary Chinese medicine, that is PCM, most are orally taken. So they're not like products to be used externally, like those to be put on your skin. Well, usually capsules, tablets, and pills are the form of these PCM. If you hold such a capsule, tablet, or pill, no asbestos fiber would be released. And just now, there was a speaker who mentioned that asbestos has been widely recognized internationally as carcinogenic. Let me cite an example here. Recently, you might have noted that Queen Mary Hospital and the Hong Kong U collaborated in a study that reveals that a toxic material, strongly toxic material, could be used to heal blood cancer or leukemia. So some toxic materials can cure cancer. That is arsenic. Yes, arsenic, I understand it, but it is diluted to 1 in several million parts. Mr. Ting, as Mr. Tam mentioned, it's more common for tremolitum to be used in Chinese medicine, but very rare for actinolitum to be used in Chinese medicine. The use of tremolitum in Chinese medicine has a history of 1,800 years. If GMP is followed in the production of PCM that contains tremolitum, it would be all right. Because if tremolitum is crushed, it may be breathed in, but that is not the case. We do adopt professional production processes. And then secondly, some PCM sold in Hong Kong may be produced locally. If they're manufactured locally, such medicine will have to fully comply with the requirements of the SARG. The equipment and process of manufacturing have to strictly observe the requirements in Hong Kong. So for local manufacturers, they won't import raw materials. They can't afford it. In fact, we won't object to the prohibition of the importation of tremolitum because we don't have experience and expertise here. But on the mainland, they do have the manufacturing expertise for tremolitum. They do have the GMP technology. Dr. Lo Wai Kwok, I've been very lenient in timing. You understand this. Next, Mr. Wong Kwong Wai. Mr. Kenny Wong. Madam Chairman, I can't see how capsules, tablets, and pills in Chinese medicine can pollute the air. The existing laws are to ban the sale of tremolitum in Hong Kong. So the contact of tremolitum in Hong Kong is very, very low. Next, we have Dr. Yu, the medical consultant.
Okay, now we have heard from our Chinese medicine friends about reports and so on. Now, if you look at the reports carefully, and I have submitted details to the Secretariat, if you look at it carefully, you would see that for colon cancer, the IRC working group, they have a same number of people holding different views, and they cannot group this under category 1 carcinogens. It doesn't mean that they have enough evidence. Now, 2 weeks ago, I met the chairman of the expert panel in Malaysia. I asked him the question on this particular issue, and he said that if you look at it carefully, they have different number of people holding different views. And then I'd like to give you another example. Now, this was given to me by a friend. I don't think I need it. Okay, so I'm going to ask the EPD experts, how am I going to handle this particular box? Do I just throw it into the rubbish bin? The EPD, do you want to respond? Maybe I'll hear all the submissions first. Mr. Poon, I'd like to thank the delegations for coming here. And it seems that most are in favor of protecting the public, but there are different views on the exemptions. Now, I think Dr. Yu asked a question which I wanted to ask the government as well. So if you bought something containing the asbestos, and if you are not going to take it, then what is to be done with the product? Now, there is a mention of a certain fund. Now, because we have a fund for pneumoconiosis, and the setting up of a fund may be a way to solve the problem. Now, for the materials that needed to be disposed, and I would like to hear from the government how they plan to do the work. Now, the point about machinery having to use asbestos regularly, now, I would like to know if we can have a list of all these items, because there may be different materials or different machineries. Now, apart from generators and other machineries, right? Can Ms. Ho from the Gammon Construction Limited help? Mr. Cam, now, is there anything you can say right away? For example, what machineries would have regular use of asbestos? Now, I may not be able to specify very clearly what type of machineries use asbestos. Now, but for braking systems, it is possible that they will contain asbestos, as well as the connection points or joints for conduits. It is possible that asbestos might be found. So, Mr. Cam and Ms. Ho, maybe you can help to get some information and hand them to us, to the Secretariat later on. Anything else from Mr. Poon? No. Okay, Mr. Leung then. I would like to ask the three friends here from the Chinese medicine industry. Now, the use of the tremolitum, can it be replaced? Can you use something else? And how will the overall effect be influenced? Because I know many ingredients have been used for a long time, for example, tiger bones, but then they are no longer allowed because substitutes can be found. So the first question is there something to replace tremolitum, and how frequently is it used? Now, I'd like to ask the administration. Now, you have heard from the three friends from the Chinese medicine industry, and from Dr. Yu, it's like a 50-50 split. It's not yet a majority. Now, what is the view of the government here? And according to Dr. Yu, if you give it exemption, but you can label it in such a way so that when people were to dispose of it, they can be more careful. Another friend from the Chinese medicine industry said that the material is not manufactured in Hong Kong, but only imported. Now, but if memory serves, you also will exempt the import of the original material or the raw materials. Maybe I ask the three friends whether substitutes are available, and what will be the overall effect if substitutes are used. So we follow the same order, beginning with you, Mr. Tam. For actinolatum, there are no products containing it. Now, but for tremolitum, it is beneficial for the kidney and warms the body. So for the effect, it is not the case that all the materials or ingredients are the same, but according to the Chinese medicine experts, the tremolitum is more efficacious. It's going to release its effect more easily. Okay, there might be similar ingredients that have the same effect, but they are not exactly identical. And as I was saying, PCM containing tremolitum, most of them are imported. It is very, very rare for this to be manufactured from raw materials in Hong Kong. Mr. Ting, now for tremolitum, it is warming the kidneys, and from the expert Chinese medicine, it is quite a good material among other similar materials, for example, seahorses. So this is pretty unique in its efficacy. Now, as to whether it can be replaced, now like Western medicine, you can use the same chemicals to replace it. But for the Chinese medicine, it's more complicated. It can have a very complex structure. And if you want to find something to be identical substitute, it seems that so far we are not able to do it. We cannot achieve a 100% identical substitute. Now, it is not possible for Hong Kong manufacturers to manufacture the product from raw materials because it's not allowed to be imported in the first place. Now, for tremolitum, it is not really widely used. Now, but for this type of medicine and other Chinese medicine, it is only part of an overall system. And if we have no evidence showing its adverse use, and then you delete it, I think it's something that we should think more carefully about. Now, any response to Dr. Leung's question first? Now, thank you, Chair. Now, thank you, Dr. Leung, for your question. I am not a medical doctor, so I don't have the professional expertise to answer the question. But when we do the bill, we have been in touch with the health department. And in our present bill, for PCM containing actinolitum and tremolitum, we should have an exemption clause, and we should follow the registered PCM under the ordinance. And we are not asking for asbestos as raw materials to be imported into Hong Kong to do PCM. This is not the PCM exemption. We are saying that for PCM already containing the product to be exempted in Hong Kong. Now, for the handling, manufacturing, and transportation and the associated health risks, these should not be there in the first place, because you are talking about already fully packed materials. Now, we have taken reference from the Health Department and the PCM Regulation Committee. Now, for the Health Department, we have the Assistant Director telling us about the exemption arrangement, and they will look at the actual situation. And for these PCM, they've been used for more than 1,000 years, and there is no evidence to show that there are risks. So we are not against exemptions. So based on the Department of Health suggestion, when we are handling the bill, it is feasible to have exemptions in this bill. Now, I think there are other follow-ups that we can do later on, because Dr. Lam is not here, because we have got a paper. Now, have you actually read the paper, or have you not read the paper? So you have to tell us whether you have actually studied the paper. So I will leave the other details for later meeting. Now, in 2009, it was said that a comparable number have expressed different views as to whether this will give rise to cancer when taken orally. So maybe we can ask Mr. Lai to follow this up with your expert colleagues. Let me give a brief response. Now, the submission given to us we have from the Hong Kong Workers' Health Center. Yes, we have received their submission and handed it over to the Department of Health. So it is something that we have considered and then make such suggestions.
Mr. Tan Kah Piu. Thank you, Chairman. I have a few concerns. First of all, just now, the Hong Kong Construction Association mentioned different scales of construction in companies possessing asbestos equipment. Can such equipment be used anymore? If so, under what circumstances and restrictions? Of course, the most important question is whether or not they should continue to be used. I think you should have a checklist of such equipment containing asbestos. So what's the answer from the administration? Can such equipment be used anymore? And if so, is it against the law? Who will answer this? Mr. Lai? Thank you, Mr. Tang. In fact, this amendment bill mainly seeks to ban the importation and use of raw materials and equipment containing asbestos. But for existing equipment and machinery containing asbestos, with no intention to ban them. However, in future, for the sake of repair, if asbestos materials are to be imported to repair and maintain the equipment or machinery, then sorry, that will not be allowed, unless they can give sufficient justifications. Otherwise, no special exemption will be granted. If you visit advanced jurisdictions in the world like the EU, the UK, and Australia, in the past decade or so, they had already banned the importation of products containing asbestos. And then throughout the world and throughout many trades and industries, substitutes for asbestos had been used and identified. So there should be substitutes. So those workers using the equipment may be harmed, right? I mean, there is such a possibility. If that's the case, how will you compile an inventory of such equipment and the date of use? Because in future, if a worker contracts a certain disease, there may be litigations. So how are you going to compile such an inventory? Now, if you allow existing equipment to be used, have you considered special measures to further protect the workers from being harmed by airborne asbestos? Perhaps I should further explain these equipment to you. As some of the speakers said, some equipment like transformers may have certain parts that contain asbestos. Well, generators or transformers, etc., can be used, as Mr. Lai said. In these equipment, there may be parts that contain asbestos, but these parts are actually enclosed in the machinery or equipment. During the consultation exercise, some companies said that they might be transporting the transformer from one location to another. Still, the asbestos is enclosed, so there's no reason why that transformer could not be used anymore. That's reasonable. In future, if such machinery is to be repaired, or if it has to be opened up to replace a certain part, then the company should ensure that the asbestos would not be released. So the company concerned does have this responsibility. Say if the part has broken down and the part has to be imported, then as Mr. Lai said, the company has to explain to us why it still has to import a part that contains asbestos. Why can't it opt for a part that does not contain asbestos? In law, we already have such requirements. That is, there are provisions to guard against the release of asbestos. That means in law, if a contractor knows that a certain piece of equipment contains asbestos, it would caution its workers that the equipment contains asbestos. Maybe there's a warning label on the equipment. Is that the case? In recent years, new machinery and equipment no longer carries asbestos. I mean existing equipment. Well, let me finish. Well, existing asbestos-containing equipment are rather old. Only the rather old equipment and machinery contains asbestos. But only the owner of the equipment knows whether or not a certain part in the machinery contains asbestos. He should know it because he ordered the equipment himself. The major concern is that that owner has to adopt measures to guard against the release of asbestos. So that's required by law. I wonder whether the trade associations have anything to add. Well, obviously, the construction association or the frontline workers associations may like to say something. Construction association? Mr. Lai said that company owners or senior employees may know which parts of a machinery contain asbestos, but then frontline workers may not know whether or not, for example, in a boiler, there's asbestos parts. So how should we ensure that the workers are duly protected, and how can we guard against the release of asbestos in the air? Well, if anybody wants to say anything, he or she should raise his or her hand first, because you don't know who's sitting behind you. Who would like to speak? Mr. Yu? Our association is of the view that workers' health should be our first and foremost concern. As for which equipment contains what parts that contain asbestos, well, basically it should be the generator. Of course, I do not rule out the possibility of other parts of the machine containing asbestos. Now, asbestos is mainly used for insulation, so where heat insulation is required, asbestos may be used. I think I have to go back and talk to my members. Perhaps we should work out, together with the EPD, a full list. I think it's mainly about repair. For transportation, if you do not disturb the asbestos, if you do not open up the asbestos, it will not be released. So, Mr. Yu, would you please go back and do some coordination amongst your members and work out with the EPD officials and compile an inventory for us. Now, if there are no further questions from members, I'll also have some questions. I'd like to follow up on what Mr. Leung from Fugro said. That is, how to define fiber form. And what about baby powder and cosmetics that may also contain asbestos? Administration? From your LegCo brief, we can see some products that contain asbestos. Well, baby powder can also contain asbestos. When diapers are changed for the baby, we may breathe in asbestos. Is it true that baby powder also contains asbestos? Well, it is highly unlikely that baby powder contains asbestos. Perhaps I should elaborate. Why is it that some of our friends here raised this? The reason is, in this amendment bill, we mention the previous threshold of 1% of asbestos. This time, in terms of weight, the use of asbestos over the 1% threshold, this requirement will be dropped. Well, let me elaborate and you'll understand. And just now, some doctors said that asbestos is carcinogenic. But we don't know under what circumstances will asbestos not be hazardous, because we do not know the threshold. So we'd like to minimize the composition. Why 1% in the past? That's the method to detect asbestos. The reliability was up to about 1%. That means below 1%, the test results might not be very reliable. At that time, our laws included this 1% threshold. Is actually a level of reliability. As science and technology advanced, we might have got more reliable tests. Now, asbestos-containing materials. It's not necessary to include this threshold in the definition in the law. If something contains asbestos, it contains asbestos. The Bureau Director can actually announce testing methods or recognized testing methods. So this is a very technical issue, and we would like to leave it to the technical parts of the law. So if a material contains asbestos, it contains asbestos. In future, if this amendment bill is enacted, we won't differentiate between asbestos naturally in existence or not in existence naturally. Our objective is to give the biggest protection to the public. Now, what products contain asbestos then? Just now I was asking a question that most members of the public would like to know the answer. Baby powder, does it contain asbestos? I've already given you the answer. So yes or no? The chance of baby powder containing asbestos is very low. In an extreme case, somebody may say that baby powder contains asbestos, but generally speaking, baby powder shouldn't contain asbestos. If you ask me what common products may contain asbestos, well, like asbestos tiles in wave form, they may contain asbestos or asbestos-containing material. For the pneumoconiosis compensation fund, we did discuss with them to see how we can work on these common products with asbestos or asbestos-containing materials in order to assist the public, in particular the construction workers. Well, asbestos tiles obviously are believed to contain asbestos, and people in the industry, when dismantling such tiles, given their past experience, would find some professionals to do it. But I was asking for products commonly used by the public. Mr. Mok said that the chance was very, very slim. Still, I'd like the administration to go back and find out such products for us. Well, the chance is slim, but still there is a chance of such products containing asbestos. Now, we heard about actinolithum. Nobody knows actinolithum contains asbestos, although you said that actinolithum was very rarely used. So should you not have laws to require specific labeling? Of course, if a person chooses to take in that medicine after he knows that the medicine contains actinolithum, that's his choice. Should you not do something to inform members of the public? And Mr. Leung said that even cosmetics might contain asbestos. And cosmetics come into contact with the skin. They may even be swallowed or breathed in. You didn't actually give me a specific yes or no answer to such products. Madam Chairman, if the enactment bill is enacted, then irrespective of whether the product is cosmetics, baby powder, or asbestos tiles, the product should not contain asbestos. That's the most important point. So if this bill is passed, public health can be protected.
My question is, do these materials at the moment contain asbestos? You need to inform the public. So even if the materials are on sale, you should not purchase them. Now for cosmetics, talcum powder, these are not products containing asbestos that we will refer to. Now we will talk about the asbestos tiles, the brake lining of vehicles, insulators, for certain joints or conduits, or vacuum bricks. These are not things that we use on a daily basis. So if you're talking about baby powder, talcum powder, or cosmetics, they are not our areas of concern. So for brake lining, for example, if we ask the trade, we have been told that they are no longer using such material, asbestos. Well, in fact, you can tell us, Mr. Mock, that the cosmetics and so on do not have asbestos. This is the sort of straightforward answer that I would like to have. Chair, I understand your concern. I can tell you that for these consumer products, if they are imported into Hong Kong, they should not create a safety hazard. Now, for food products, if it contains asbestos, and it can lead to health risks. Now, and these products are used in other places, in EU and in other advanced countries. So if this is a common health concern, they should have been sorted out there and then. Well, that's not entirely true. Now, for GM food, because we do not have such regulation, the materials barred in the EU have been shipped to Hong Kong. But that's precisely why we need to have this amendment. Mr. Tang, I'll be brief. Let's assume that the Chinese medicine will enjoy exemption. And what about the PCM going beyond the expiry date? Now, how can they be disposed of properly? And also, we heard from the construction industry, is it possible to subsidize owners of tenement buildings to get rid of the asbestos? Anything from the government? Mr. Mock or Mr. Lai? Now, on older tenement buildings, we have been paying attention to the handling of asbestos, and old tenement buildings and its demolition is one area of concern. And also in the new territories, in the rural places, in the farm places, these buildings tend to be old, and there's a good chance that they would contain asbestos. Now, first of all, on urban, older tenement buildings, in the last decade or so, with urban renewal, as well as the buildings department stepping up supervision and refurbishment requirements, now they are working in conjunction with the buildings department. So when the tenant buildings are undergoing refurbishment work, they should be very sensitive to the fact that asbestos might be there, and they should use straightforward examples and to ask dedicated contractors to deal with the work. Now, I have here a piece of paper, a poster. Is a A4 size, but we have much bigger posters. We'll be giving out to tenement buildings and their owners so that they know which sort of building materials, such as tiles and so on, may or would have a good chance of containing asbestos. And if they were to be demolished, they must have registered contractors doing the work. Now, the Housing Society also has a funding scheme to help these old tenant buildings undergo renovation. And if there is a problem of asbestos needing to be cleared away, they can ask for subsidies. So your answer is that the government will not particularly help the buildings with asbestos to get rid of the work. Now, the focus of our work is on older tenement buildings, and they may have asbestos there. And if these owners want to deal with the demolition of asbestos, they have to use registered contractors, and they can use loans or subsidies from the housing society. Now, you have to pay attention to the fact that there is leftover fund in the pneumoconiosis fund. And right. Now, what about disposal of PCM? Now, if there are importers having to handle PCM which have expired and they contain asbestos, they should ask qualified disposal handlers, because these come under the regulation of such disposal regulations. They have to be properly wrapped and taken to disposal sites. Now, does the trade, the Chinese medicine trade, now when they are doing the retail, for example, are they aware of such regulations? Now, we have been explaining this disposal regulations to the retailers. But of course, as a result of today's discussion, we can step up our information promotion and do even more. And maybe we ask the representatives from the trade, do you know who to approach? Because Mr. Mok talked about dedicated people. Now, we're not talking about demolition of buildings, but I was again starting from Mr. Tam in the front row. Thank you, Chair. Now, for the disposal of PCM, all along we have a way to deal with their disposal. Now, the Health Department and as well as the Committee on PCM, they have regulations on the recycling or of these PCM and what rules to follow. Now, the simplest way is that after collecting these PCM, we do not just throw them out into the streets. We have guidelines, and we have to have approved contractors. Even if you are taking them to the landfill, you cannot just do it on your own. You must have approved contractors to do the work. I believe you will have the same answer, is that right? So maybe I ask Mr. Chen from the Logistics Association. Thank you, Chair. Now, it seems that the focus is on the Chinese medicine, but I agree with Mr. Tang. The focus is really on the asbestos tiles and their demolition and to trace its origin. Now, you have proper and pretty good arrangement for the importation of these materials. But then the historical problems of the asbestos tiles, that's the focus. That should be the focus of our work. And we're not just talking about tenement buildings, we're also talking about buildings constructed by the housing society. So now several decades after they have been built, and now you're asking them to refurbish the thing. Now, if you were to be in their shoes, Mr. Mok, they are the grassroots of society, and if they are not subsidized, then how can they afford such renovation? They have to find the funds to do the work. Now, how can this be done? You are a responsible government. You should pay more attention to the needs of the people to help those directly in need not just putting the focus on the PCM. I think you should do more for the grassroots in society. Mr. Lai or Mr. Mok, anything from you? Now, if they are construction tiles, if they are not damaged, they should not pose any direct health risks. But when they are demolished or renovation is needed, and if there are asbestos exposed to the air, now under this situation, we want very much the owners to follow the professional guideline. Otherwise, they'll be acting against the law. Now, on subsidy, now, as has been said, the Housing Society has a subsidy scheme to help the owners of older tenement buildings for such renovation work. Any follow-up questions from members? Now, otherwise, I would like to thank all the delegation members attending the meeting today, and thank you for the government officials, and I declare the meeting adjourned.